now the expectation is you need to get to $3 to $5 million in revenue in a year. And you're not doing it. You're not making it, which means that you're taking a down round, which means you're selling off huge chunks of your company. The board is getting replaced, like CEOs getting fired, like a CRO and sales teams getting rejiggered and reshaped, whatever. Like most engineering is getting downsized. Like it's like a real bad day.
Who says tech can't be human?
What's going on, Hacker Valley fam? Welcome back to the show. There's a lot of people that I've met over the years, and there's some people, when you read things about cybersecurity, you're like, oh, I want to meet this person one day. I want to meet this person. You keep seeing their research, you keep seeing findings, you keep hearing about them. Well, previously I was at a conference called the Hacker Hoedown here in Austin. It's hosted by Pedro Bamini. And I finally got to meet a legend that I've known about in the space for decades. My special guest for this episode is Robert Hansen, also known as RSnake. RSnake is a legendary hacker. You probably have seen some of his research. He's also an author and managing director at Grossman Ventures, which is kind of his new baby. But RSnake, also known as Robert Hansen, welcome to the show. Glad to have you.
Thank you so much, Ron. Really appreciate it. I've been looking forward to this actually for months, I think. We've been talking about this for a while.
We have. And I remember how it all started. I've been working with Hoedown, which is a bug bounty program by Mozilla. And Pedro one day brought us this awesome vulnerability. And he's like, oh, I got this vulnerability from RSnake. It will allow you to insert message history into a LLM, and then you could control it to act a little bit unfiltered, unbounded. And I've been using this technique ever since. I've been using it ever since.
Isn't that amazing?
But you know, like you've had so many findings from clickjacking to DNS enumeration, cross-site scripting. I mean, the list goes on. So what is your focus today? What's keeping your excitement and your attention?
Well, we have the fund, so that's certainly, I would say, the bulk of my like big thinking stuff going on. But we're also really interested in the vulnerability management space. We've been thinking for a while now that there needs to be a kind of a rethink in that space. We haven't exactly settled on how that's going to play out, but we're really close, I think. So maybe the next couple months we'll have more to talk about there. But the rest of it's just trying to figure out more stuff about LLMs, like really digging into the kind of the base of it, trying to figure out ways to do fine tuning to make things do things they shouldn't, and jailbreaking, and just how it's used in nature in the wild. Because I have a whole bunch of marketing friends that tend to use it, and they use it in weird ways, and I want to kind of stay ahead of them. And then I also have a newsletter that uses AI quite heavily, which I think we're going to talk about. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just like a lot of AI. I'm thinking about AI a lot these days.
I love the way that people in the Austin community are using AI, especially the cyber Austin community, because a lot of people that I've spoken to about AI, they're like, oh, it just makes stuff up. It's not accurate. And I'm like, well, yeah, if you're not adding in your own context. And I know for you specifically, you have like a process, some of your own data sources that you've curated and collected over the years that you're able to apply LLMs to, and it's providing immense value, speeding up your workflow, but also boosting your creativity in an epic way. Let's talk about that.
Well, I think probably the best use case for this is the newsletter. So I have the same problem I think a lot of security people do. Like a lot of people come to me and they ask me, like, what do you think about blah, blah, blah? And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, you know, the internet is huge and the world is even bigger than that. And so what do you mean that one thing that one guy did or that whatever? And so I'm always kind of playing catch up. I always feel like I'm behind, even though a lot of people think I'm really on the cutting edge. It doesn't feel that way. It feels like I'm always kind of lagging. And so I decided to create a newsletter because I had the problem of just curating all of these different data sources down into one sort of palatable, here's what's going on in the world sort of look at sort of today's information, let's say. Think of it as a massive, massive, massive RSS reader. Except for the problem with RSS is there's no real good synopsis. And you don't know which one of these things matter or don't matter. So if I pull in CNN, I'm getting people's, so-and-so actress is on the outs with her ex or something. I'm like, I don't care. I don't care at all. Like, I don't know how to make it less care about this thing. Like don't want that. And then other things that seem like you might care, like, Cisco has version 3.5 of their operating system out. I'm like, I don't care. I don't care. Like, that doesn't matter to me whatsoever. I mean, maybe if I worked on that very particular product or something, I might care. Right. But I don't, so I don't. But then there's a whole bunch of like geopolitical things that matter a lot to me because they really do change what our industry is going to have to think about. When the Ukraine war was kicking off, I'm like, like this is going to really, really affect a lot of these Ukrainian devs. It's going to affect how we work with Russia, all kinds of things. Like, so I kind of need to stay ahead of that. And so basically I built this system that takes in tons and tons and tons and tons of RSS feeds. I think like 400 or so. And it basically just asks a simple question, like downgrades it into raw text. So it's not just like grabbing images and CSS and objects and all that other stuff. And then fires that off to an LLM and says, okay, give me a synopsis of this in this very specific format. Categorize it so I know, like, is this cybersecurity? Is this geopolitical? Is this, economics? Is this what is the different categorization? And then rank it from 1 to 10, but do it in the context of how many people it matters to. So if it only matters to like 5 people on Earth, obviously it's not going to matter to me. Right. If it matters to like 50% of the public, then that would rate a 5. If it's 100% of the public's going to care, that's a 10. That's like, we got to get on this. Like Robert has to read this one. And so, but in the category that it matters. So from a geopolitical perspective, a 10, or from a cybersecurity perspective, a 10. So like 10 or 100% of cybersecurity experts are going to have to know about this one kind of thing. Mm. So that helps kind of narrow it down to like things that I might very likely to care about. And then one of the things I found, despite what everyone says, LLMs are terrible at JSON, like really awful. Awful. Like they might be able to output something that is JSON, but it doesn't match the JSON that you're asking for. And so what I've done is I've created this, it's a library, but it's a library that really does a lot of coaxing to say, like, you have to do it in this exact format. And if you don't do it, I'm going to reject it. And it's very draconian. Like if the first character isn't an open squiggly bracket, it's like you're out. And right. I don't want to see any more, which means you can't even use the JSON parser that comes inside like OpenAI, for instance, because it wants to output the entire JSON, one big chunk, one big blob. But that doesn't work for me. I need to know in the first character if you got it right or wrong. Like if you haven't done the first character, I'm out. But if you also haven't done it in the 10th character, you're out, right? So it very quickly I can say you're in or you're out without having to waste a lot of tokens because it can get very expensive. And so my current tests, I have something like between 1,000 and 3,000 articles a day going through it, which is quite a few articles. Imagine me trying to read 1,000 to 3,000 articles a day.
Even like reading 10 articles right. Where you feel as though you're walking away knowing for sure, what happened. I think it's pretty difficult, especially with all the Zooms that we have.
Right, there you go. But what I can do is I can compress it down in just to a paragraph of kind of high level synopsis, a couple of bullets of sort of key things, and then a link. And so just that over and over and over again. And then ranked and stacked ordered. And then I have another code on top of it that can basically just select and say, show me 50 of the top articles. Like I have time for 50 today or whatever, right? Or 10 or 5 or whatever. And it'll show you the top ranked ones and only that amount and no more. And so what that allows you to do is very quickly analyze the things that are most likely to matter. And you can skim through them very quickly. You can get through like 100 articles in 30 minutes, like really fast. Like, nope, don't care. Oh, that's super important. Like, what's going on? Click on it. It's like, and read the whole article. Like, that's super, super important. I'm really glad I know that now. And, then keep going, right? And so the way the newsletter works, or at least half of the newsletter, there's another half, but the second half of the newsletter, my wife is the editor, so she'll go in and she'll do a first pass, like things she thinks I will probably care about. So she takes like the first, call it 200 to 300 articles, and compresses them down to maybe 100. And from there, I choose the ones I think are actually important. And so get it down to more like 60, 70, somewhere in that range at the end. And that way it's as a pre-curated list. Like, it's gone through a high pass, low value filter. It's gone through a kind of medium pass, pretty good filter, and then through my filter. And by that point, it's pretty good. It's about as good as you could ask. I mean, it's about as good as any New York Times editor is going to do, like they make mistakes too. Right. And so as a result, like the feedback I'm getting from people, and I get a lot of feedback on this, surprisingly. Like, I didn't think I would, but I've probably gotten like probably 2-3 dozen people like specifically reaching out to me saying, Robert, this is incredible. Like, this is actually better than like other like paid for geopolitical newsletters. And it's all open source intelligence. Like, where are you getting all, like, how do you collect all this? And it's like, this is this system. And if I had to do it by hand, there's just no way I would never get around to it. But as a result, now, like, people ask me like what's going on in some country, like when Syria was basically being taken over, like people were coming to me specifically like, oh, Robert, how are you getting all this information? Like there's so many different groups involved in this conflict. You have the Kurds in the north, and the Israelis in the south, and all of a sudden China's sort of weirdly involved because the Uyghurs now have missiles that they got from the Assad regime, and the Turks are pissed off and they're starting to fund these guys, and Hezbollah's getting bombed, and it's like all this stuff's happening and at the same time, and there's no way for a normal human being to analyze all that unless you have it kind of down compressed into sort of bite-sized chunks, right? And then you can start putting the puzzle pieces together. So yeah, I think it's just, it's made me insanely smarter about geopolitics in very interesting, weird ways. And once you become an expert in a thing, people start reaching out to you because you're an expert in the thing, and they want to teach you things, or like correct you when you get something wrong, or give you additional feedback or whatever. And so that just makes it better. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make it worse, it makes it better. So
one of the things I think people are hesitant about is the pricing of any new service, especially when you allow it to run in this type of way and it's pay as you go. When AWS was first coming out, I was deep into the weeds, and some of my friends said, hey, I don't want to open an AWS account because I'm afraid of getting surprised with a high bill. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, do you have your stuff opened up and people are crypto mining, or what's the situation? And I hear the same thing with AI. Like, oh, I think it could get expensive if I run thousands of articles through it per day. So since you have your full on workflow that's giving you that list of like 50 articles, which is amazing, how much does that cost?
About 20 cents a day.
20 cents.
And so the reason for that is, number one, I don't let it get away from itself. If it starts looking like it's too long, throw it away. I don't. It's too long. If it's not correctly formatted, throw it away. Don't let it output any more than you think you need. If it starts being redundant and saying the same thing twice, chuck it. You know what I mean? Like, because you can very quickly know programmatically. So this is all code. This isn't LLM. In code, you can pretty quickly know if something is going to start misbehaving within a handful of tokens, usually. It's funny because I have another piece of software I can't really get into too much just because it's a buddy of mine's, his company. But he asked me to write something up for him. And at this one point, it was like trying to output this one particular thing. And he's like, oh, it's broken. I'm like, it's not broken. It's like, but it's just hitting the same thing saying the same thing over and over again. I'm like, no. The LLM is saying the same thing over and over again, and it's wrong every single time. And then all of a sudden it worked. And he's like, oh, it's worked. I'm like, it was always working. It's just that the first couple of tokens weren't properly formatted. So it's throwing away, and just in a quick cycle. So the other big trick is the mini models instead of people are using these mega models, but for stuff like summarization, you just don't need it. In fact, if anything, they're way worse. Not only are more expensive, they're way slower. Like this is doing thousands of and many thousands on top of that. It's going to, many iterations on top of that. You're talking about, maybe 10 to 15,000 requests a day. Like that takes time. Like there's no way around it. So if you use one of these slower, like big thinking models, like, oh, God help you, man, you'll be doing that all day long. I can get all of my stuff done in a couple hours, let's say. And then by the time I wake up, it's all there sitting waiting for me.
One of the things that I find fascinating about you and your journey is you found ways to honor your interests and your skills, but also be an entrepreneur. How do you think cybersecurity practitioners should think about monetizing or generating revenue for themselves? Because I think cybersecurity people, we're very marketable. We have a background that people have to buy now, especially large corporations. You have to buy cybersecurity of some sort, whether it's a service, product, team, because there's compliance efforts and also keeping your customers safe. If you were starting from scratch, you didn't have this entrepreneurial spirit yet, what would be the first place you would try to generate income and revenue?
It depends on how good you are. If you're a real expert in your field, whatever that area, man, everybody's looking for you. Everybody wants to hear what you have to say. If you're not an expert, that's a different story. Then you're going to have to kind of work around the edges, be more of a community builder, get people together at conferences or whatever, and then gets people to sponsor that thing that you're bringing together, because there is a lot of value in relationship building and making sure that groups of people know each other, right? Getting those connections built. But if you're an expert, if you really know what you're doing, man, the sky is the limit, because people desperately want to know what you know, especially if you're a researcher where you're coming up with net new stuff as opposed to just an expert at existing tools or something. Man, like you just find the companies that are working in that space and just say, look, I'm an expert. Do you guys want to work with me? Like what could we do together? Like, let's brainstorm. Like have them buy you a beer at a conference and just go over 100 different ideas and see what sticks. And those vendors will figure out a way to monetize you. The product marketing teams, the sales teams, they need experts to show up to sales meetings and help make introductions, to write content, to be on podcasts, all of that stuff's in scope. And man, they can't get enough of the experts, and there's just so few of them. And so if you are one, man, you're in a very sweet position.
That is a great breakdown without even getting into the specifics of how to generate revenue, because like you're saying, just be available for opportunities. When I was working at Intel, there was many cybersecurity vendors that would just roll out the red carpet for me. And I'm like, why are you doing this? We've already gone with a different solution. Why do you want me to come to this happy hour with all this nice food and drinks when I've rejected you? And I didn't realize the fact that someone from a Fortune 500 company was coming. That's an advertising tactic. Now you can get other people to show up because, hey, we have people from Intel, Netflix, all these different people from these FANG companies coming out to this event. And that right there is also value, just showing up with a big name.
If I am hanging out with you at a conference and I'm kind of bored or whatever, and you're like, hey, I'm going to go to this event, for this such and such company. You want to come? I'm like, sure. And now you and I are going, and I show up, and they're like, oh, it's RSnake. Great. Great. Right. And they can market to me and you, and maybe you eventually go to a different company, and now you have your customer, and you have this good relationship. And meanwhile, I'm like, hey, I just met 3 of those guys, and I didn't know anybody over there anymore. That's cool stuff. Let me look at your research. Let's be friends. And man, the power of networking, our community, believe it or not, is absolutely abysmal at networking. I'll give you the most concrete example I can give you. Where do we all go to talk?
Twitter and LinkedIn.
No, we don't, because there's a ton of people who will not go on one or more of those platforms. So I ask again, where do we all talk? And the answer is it just isn't a spot. And then I mean, lobbies could be it. It could be, but the problem is that's 1 day a year, 5 days a year, whatever. Like
Exactly.
it just sucks. And I mean, it's okay. You get to see all your great friends again, whatever, play catch up. But wouldn't it be so much better if we were all talking all at the same time, especially about like product features and where the industry should be going and whatever non-drama stuff, which I know are it's impossible to get our industry to not do drama. So let's just be honest about that one. But if we could create a standard place for us all to talk, man, that would just be absolutely incredible. But in the meantime, there's lots of smaller communities that could be created. And I mean, I'll be honest, I've probably been invited to 10, 20 communities over the years. That's not very many.
Not.
It really is not that many. And in terms of like big groups of people where it's like we're going to create a working group for this new way of thinking about things, maybe 5 I've been invited to, which again is not many, especially considering how long I've been in this industry. And so I think that there's a ton of room for ways of thinking. There's guys out there like Laz, I don't know if you've ever met him or not, who are doing this pretty well, I think, finding the right people to invite to the right things and making sure that they all actually meet each other, not just they're in the room together, like actually walking across the room, like you need to meet so-and-so, like have you met so-and-so and so-and-so, you need to talk about these guys, and like one of those.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of room for that type of networking.
I need to jump in for a second and share some details about a special group that we've created for you, our listeners. We understand the importance of creativity in cybersecurity, and Hacker Valley has created a special Cyber Creators Mastermind. Each month, we meet and discuss how to break down technical concepts through stories, the intricacies and opportunities of using audio and video to highlight what's important in cybersecurity, and we share how you can use content to highlight the hard work that you put into your craft. You can check out the mastermind by visiting hackervalley.com/mastermind. We'd love to help unlock your creative potential and would love to see you there. There's not many people that are true connectors in that way. Like you're mentioning, there's probably just a handful of people that intentionally have the purpose of, I want to connect people. Now, I think with the current state of cyber, it's like, hey, I want to learn new things. Like that's where the connecting typically comes from. Like when we met, we were just chatting at a table, and then you told me your name was RSnake, and I was like, whoa, hold on a second. I didn't know that you were RSnake.
Didn't know I was bald, did you?
I thought RSnake, was long hair flowing in the wind. You had a button down. I was like, oh, this guy doesn't look. And it's also a little bit of perception as well. Like with our industry, since we don't have these huge connectors of people, you don't really realize what people look like. Before our podcast was a video, people thought I was white. They're like, Ron, we thought you were some white guy because you have this very animated voice that typically you hear from a white person. So I was like, oh my gosh, that's really fascinating that we have all these preconceived notions of who people are even. And that shows you how small the community is.
I think the closest thing we have are the sales group, right? The sales contingent. And they're good at introducing that group of people to my company, right? They're good at that type of connecting. But as you said, I don't think that there's a ton of just like everyone get together and meet each other. Like like I know everybody in the room, and I'm trying to make sure everybody knows each other. That just really is. It's such a rare thing in this community. So I think there's a lot of room for that, and I think there is a lot of money to be made in it.
I believe that one group that has the most potential for this type of opportunity are VCs. And I know that that's an area that you are starting to innovate in and reinvent in your own ways. What is your thought on the current state of starting companies, getting venture capital, and I think even private equity? Like I think a lot of us in cyber, we forget, especially like practitioners, we forget that private equity is a great avenue if you have revenue. But yeah, what is your thoughts on the current state of starting companies in cyber?
So I am extremely worried for our companies, and I didn't really understand this until I started going down this path, but the valuations that have been gifted upon companies seems like a good idea until you actually start doing the math. And what I mean by that is, like, Ron, let's say you don't even have an idea. You come to me, you're like, I don't have an idea, but I really want to start a company. I'm like, here's $1 million, right? And just
Yeah.
like, all I ask is like 4% of your company, whatever. Just like let's talk and let's figure it out. You're like, yeah, and you're starting popping champagne and like going on a road show and talking to thousands of people and maybe even hire a dev and you guys can start brainstorming stuff. Most people will think that's a really, really, really awesome thing. And it is not. And it especially depends on who gave you the money. So I'll give you an example. Some of the bigger guys, they'll give you a pretty big, $1, $2, $3 million tranche or something, just like, here you go for some small chunk of your company. And then you'll burn through it and you're like, okay, I think we finally came up with the idea. And they'll take a look at it and they're like, nah. Now try to raise money after one of the big guys passed on you. What's going to happen is all the other VCs are going to say, well, since they were lead on the first one, they're going to want to be lead on the second one. You're like, no, they don't want to be lead. Why not? It is death to your company. Like you are game over. Your company is done. Forget it. But the other thing that can happen is, so you take, these are real companies, by the way. This is not like make believe. So there's a company that they didn't have an idea, no idea at all. We talked to them multiple times. Smart founder. We like the founder. I think it could be coached and everything. Took $1 million round. And that was just to get them past the ideation phase to the point where they actually had an idea, right? So at the idea, when they finally have an idea, they would expect to take like a $1 to $5 million round, somewhere in that range, depending on. And there would be no expectation of revenue, right? None, right? But they would take like, some pretty good chunk of the company, 15, 20% of the company, something like that. And then from there, they're going to have to actually get to revenue after that first. That's the expectation is you do all your dev work here and now you get to revenue, right?
Right.
And so that next tranche is going to be somewhere between 10 to 15 million probably. So now you're $25 million in, something like that. But that 10 to $15 million, you're going to need to be seeing some really rapid growth going into that. Some pretty substantial amounts of money coming in, multi-million dollars coming in, to make sense for the valuation, right? And then from there, it's not that tranche that's the one that's going to kill you. It's the one after that. So you took $15 million, whatever, maybe made it to $1 million in revenue, maybe if you're very, very lucky. And now you've just taken your $20, $30 million like C round, if those words even mean anything anymore. And now the expectation is you need to get to $3 to $5 million in revenue in a year. And you're not doing it. You're not making it, which means that you're taking a down round, which means you're selling off huge chunks of your company. The board is getting replaced, like CEO is getting fired, like CRO and sales teams getting rejiggered and reshaped, whatever. Like most engineering is getting downsized. Like it's like a real bad day. Like that's the death of a company. You're going to be sold off for parts. Yeah, you might have an acquisition, but it'll be awful. No one's making any money, including the VCs. It's a bad day. But that is the song story of most of the companies that we're looking at. Like they're taking these massive valuations. Like, no, you need to keep your valuations low. Yes, it means giving up more of the company to the VC, but if you keep it low, then as you ramp up your revenue, it makes sense with the amount of money you've taken. So you continue to grow at a nice, slow cadence, whatever your actual business will support, but you only take as much as you need and no more.
Yeah.
And that discipline has never been, pushed out into the minds of the CEOs. Like I still see people like freaking out with their like $10 million round. And it's like, no, what you've signed up for is an insane amount of growth. And unless you really, really know what you're doing and you've really nailed the product market fit and whatever, and have design partners who are ready to go, et cetera, that is dangerous, super, super dangerous. It can be done. I'm not saying it's not possible, but the amount of companies that can pull it off who have never done it before and don't know anybody in the industry or starting from scratch, I like, that's not a bet. It's worth taking.
Yeah, there's several multi-time CEOs. I've worked with quite a few. I love working with the CEOs in this space that I've done it before because they've learned some of these hard lessons. They've given up parts of their company that weren't actually for sale.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the best way to learn that is the hard way. We learn best through osmosis and trauma. That trauma will stick with you. And I've been wondering, especially seeing all the companies in the space, are we creating new things or are we reinventing the same thing over and over again?
That's a good question. I think there is tons of innovation left. But it kind of feels a little like Hollywood where, people prefer it when they recognize it,
Yeah.
If it's really completely out there, it takes a long time to get used to. And there's a reason for that. They don't have to find budgets for the thing. And if you don't have a defined budget, then you have to go sell this new idea to the market. And yes, you might even be able to pull it off like we did at Bit Discovery. Like the idea of asset management was not really a thing until like me and a handful of others, companies at the same time, like we're out there talking about it. You know what I mean? And so we sold a market on a thing, and now it's a thing, right? It exists. But a day one, hour one of trying to sell that product was rough. It's like it's hard because people have never recognized an asset management as a line item for a vuln budget. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think there's plenty of room for it, to be honest. You just have to be really prepared. Again, you don't want to take too much money. That if you're going to be doing this, you really have to take exactly the amount of money you need if you're going to a new market. Because what you can't predict is how slow the market's going to pivot towards your way of thinking. And so the other thing I would say about that is you really need influencers if you're going to go down that path.
Yes.
Whether it's internal, you already have them because that's how the company was formed, but you got to get them because you're not going to be able to sell your idea without very smart people saying, nodding, going, that's a great idea. Have you seen what they're doing? And getting everyone's focused on this new way of thinking. Because I hate to say it, but I think our industry is largely made up of lemmings. And I think there's like a herd mentality associated with it. Like if everyone's doing it, I'm probably safe too, which I think is actually an awful way to think about computer security in many ways. And I think it's caused lots of problems, which I hope to eventually start tackling. But for now, let's just say that a lot of the common wisdom, I think, is actually wrong. A lot of how we think about computer security, I think, is provably wrong, not just theoretically wrong. And now, if that's the case, well, then why would we be okay being in the herd? The herd is obviously going to get culled. It's really just the fastest pivoters that are going to survive, or they will be most likely to survive.
You know what comes to my mind when we talk about this is the migration of animals in Africa, like especially like I was watching a documentary where there was like all these I forget what they were exactly, but they were jumping over a river and there was a bunch of crocodiles or alligators in this river. I think it was wasn't buffalo, wasn't bison, antelope or something like that, and like even zebras as well.
Or something.
Yeah, okay. Jumping over the water and trying to just make it to the other side because that's where the seasons are going. But along the way, you have stuff in the water, and you don't know where the attack is at. And there's multiple crocodiles. There's multiple crocodiles just sitting there waiting. You jump in. Hopefully, your foot doesn't land on the head of the alligator. But even if you're the fastest one in the herd, you still might step in the wrong spot because of the opportunities. And I think you're so right that the adversaries, they're looking at those economic opportunities that companies are trying to get to. Cloud is one of them. If you migrate to the cloud, you get amazing efficiencies, but it comes with great risk. You're stepping into this unknown water that you don't own or manage, and there could be stuff in it.
That's right, and there has been, like Cloud Bleed, for instance, where it was a native exploit in how it worked. So, yeah, I think that crocodile analogy is a good one because what it demonstrates is that adversaries they're lazy. They will go only as far as they absolutely have to. In this case, just sit there like antelope. Food comes in from the sky, and I just open my mouth and there's food. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And if you can be lazy, you will be lazy. What we have forced the adversaries to be is efficient. We have not forced them to be innovative, and that is a big mistake. And it turns out bad guys can scale like crazy. So we have fundamentally not understood the problem as an industry, and we've been focusing almost entirely in the wrong areas, in my opinion. But I think it's provable in the fact that we spend whatever it is, many billions of dollars a year on computer security, and everybody's getting hacked anyway. And I ask people, like, what if we spent double the amount of billions? Would that have the amount of exploitation? I don't think so.
No.
So what are we doing? Like, obviously this isn't the right way. We're not spending in the right direction. Like, I don't think it's a money problem. I mean, I think maybe we do need to spend more, but certainly not doing the exact same thing we've been doing this entire time. And other things might be wildly underfunded that could get a lot more money, and all of a sudden we'd have way better abilities and effects. So,
right. If there was a magical crystal ball in the cybersecurity space, I would say that you're part of that equation where, someone could come to you and say, RSnake, help me out. What should I be focusing on over the next 3 to 6 months? And you probably have a response or at least a prediction. So for anyone that's out there listening to this episode right now, that's kind of trying to put themselves in the opportune position to be a better cyber defender, what would be your recommendation for things to research?
What we've noticed is there's been a decline, not an incline, in technical capabilities of the average practitioner inside, let's say, the Fortune 500 or, at least large enterprises. Mm-hmm. That is terrifying. We have more people who are less competent. And I think there's a lot of good reasons for why it happened. I don't have the magical, like, what occurred that made it occur. But I think the simple answer, if I had to nail it down to one thing, is that when I got started, computer security wasn't a job. It was just a fun thing you did, right? And so there was no money to be made in it. And so what it attracted were people who were just curious, intellectually curious about doing it. Maybe they were in it to learn more information. Maybe they did it because they were hacked themselves and they wanted to, like, fix the problem or whatever, but they weren't doing it for money, right? That has dramatically changed. Now there's degrees, there's programs, there's certifications, there's billions of dollars, literally billions of dollars being pushed into this industry. And what it has turned out is that now we have a lot of people who shouldn't be doing their job. And some of the conversations I've had with these people have been shockingly bad. Like, they're telling me things that have been known to not been true for at least 2 decades. And they're saying it as if it's true because they read it on some ancient blog post that has just never been disappeared from the internet, or their instructor is an idiot or taught them this, or wherever it came from. I don't know. But it certainly has no bearing on what the current state of the art is. And make no mistake, I have made a lot of mistakes in I have given people bad advice in the past, and I have had to update my way of thinking significantly over the years. And so if you are of the ilk that isn't bothered by actual fact and doing your own research, and you just want to, like, consume the data that's readily available and you're just going to assume it's right, a la just reading ChatGPT and assuming it's correct based on Stack Overflow, then you get what you deserve. You get a cadre of people who are very well-intentioned, but only there 9 to 5. And only going to do the bare minimum because they don't really know how to do any more than that. And no one's pushing them to do more than that. And what's happened is all of the senior security people who used to be in those roles, they've all gotten out. They're all like managers now, or directors, VPs, started their own companies, got out of the industry, retired, right? They're just not doing the role anymore. Like, literally, name any one of them. They're no longer doing it. Like, all the old timer security guys, they're no longer doing, like, the hardcore security stuff. And so as a result, I think what our industry has to focus on is the assumption that we're not going to have any real technical capabilities inside these big organizations anymore. And we have to take our design decisions and move them out of the premise that whomever is interacting with that tool will have any idea what they're looking at, and move it more into the realm of the computers will have to make decisions and based on expert, like expert systems built on expert knowledge, real experts. But the end consumers will never be the caliber that we once saw. Now, obviously, that's not a perfectly true statement. Obviously, there's going to be one or two people here and there that are amazing, right? And especially now that they've got so many better tools in place, blah blah blah. And there's people who are just really passionate about it, and they'll just stick it out, right? But I'm not talking about them because they really are the outliers these days. Because like I just said, I've talked to probably over 100 people now, and they all confirm what I've said. The people coming out of school don't know what they're doing. The people that they hire, they can't get the experts. They're just too expensive. Like if you're Campbell Soup, you don't have the world's best security experts working for Campbell Soup. You just don't. Even though that's a huge company, you just don't. No offense, because probably the best person in the world works at Campbell Soup. You know what I mean? But just wait for it to be
the person that's wrote the most books.
But you know what I mean, right? Like it's frustrating because I think we're still stuck in the world of assuming when you go to these trade shows that people actually know what anyone's talking about. But the more I talk to people who actually work in these trade booths or whatever, the more I realize they don't know what they're talking about, and the buyer doesn't know what they're talking about. And so it's just like this weird, like value prop via UI kind of back and forth, and having nothing at all to do with just like, you don't have to worry about this anymore. It's just taken care of. Like we built it. It's, you know what I mean? It's a little hard to explain without actually getting an individual product and product features, but I think you kind of get the gist.
Yeah, we definitely have to dive further into that because I think there's a lot to unpack. RSnake, I wanted to say thank you from the bottom of our heart for taking some time out of your busy day. I know that you're closing many deals, helping many companies. But for those that haven't already followed RSnake, be sure to check out the show notes or description wherever you're listening or watching. And with that, we'll see everyone next time.